Howdy all. It's a Friday, and Dan, I wanted to ask you something because I had heard a report on the radio yesterday. They had it was a couple days ago. They had the overnights for the Major League All-Star Game, and the ratings were, at least the overnights, I don't know what the final numbers were, that the ratings were the worst that they had had. They went down like 0.5 of a point from the previous year. And I think that's the general trend in all these All-Star games, not just baseball, but the Pro Bowl and the NHL All-Star Game. When do you think these leagues are going to get to the point where they're looking to say this isn't worth it?
Well, they're still making money, but I don't care about the Fox ratings since it wasn't on my air. But no, it doesn't hurt me. But no, they are what they are at this point. I think the novelty of them have changed so much because back in the day, the only way you could see like the National League was to watch the All-Star Game. There used to be one game on. Same thing with the NHL. You couldn't just watch these teams ad nauseum. You couldn't put up an app on your phone or on your computer and watch 4 games at once. So I think that's probably the reason. It's just the oversaturation of all the games that people are like, whatever. I went to the Foo Fighters that night instead of watching the game.
Yeah, but presumably, I guess I'm a dinosaur because I sort of like watching at least the guys getting announced, and
I think everybody likes that part.
And at least the Legends part, but I mean, if that's not even drawing anything, then they definitely have a problem. Like, that's when you say, all right, we brought out Willie Mays, we brought out Sandy Koufax, we brought out Pete Rose, like, what else do we need to do? It's sort of like a WWE event or a WrestleMania where they're like, all right, well, we brought back everybody you wanted, and it still wasn't enough. So I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, I know that the response to the home run derby, the way they did the home run derby, was better this year than it was.
I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually.
I didn't watch a minute of it, and I normally in the past would watch it, so I kind of am over home run derby. I admit that.
Yeah, but they did
the time format was pretty good.
Right, they did it in a time format. They did it sort of head to head, and I thought that was good. But yeah, I'm so anti All-Star Game, although I know like most of the media will be pro All-Star Game this year because Russ, it's in Nashville, so
of course it's going to be great. Well, here's the thing. All right,
I want to go to Nashville. That sounds like a fun weekend.
So do I.
It will be. Nashville's a great city. Here's the thing though. At those All-Star games, it is a skills competition, and then the game is fun from a sense that you get to see different line combinations and you get to see some really good skill and finesse, right? I don't mind it for that. I don't think anybody should be watching it for anything other than that.
Right.
I'm okay with it. I've always been okay with all the All-Star games, but I do recognize that, like, the Pro Bowl is clearly, like, the worst of them because it's just it almost doesn't resemble football. At least hockey, you can't really check anybody, but everything else is still there for you. And baseball is the closest because, really, other than if you're saying a guy's not going to run hard or a guy's not going to do that, it's the same game.
Yeah, I think the last player to get injured at an NFL Pro Bowl weekend was the old running back from the Patriots, Robert Edwards, who got hurt in a flag football game on the beach.
Right.
Nobody gets hurt during the Pro Bowl because they don't tackle or they don't they just the running backs fall down. It's like it's I don't know. I mean, all I can say is this. When I was a kid, I enjoyed the All-Star Game, but that was at the time when the only game of Major League Baseball was on NBC on Saturday with Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola and Costas.
Yeah.
And now, you get games every day, and you see the highlights all the time. That was the only time I would see Dave Winfield in a Padres jersey or Dave Parker in a Pittsburgh jersey. Or if for hockey, Gordie Howe or Wayne Gretzky, unless Edmonton was on Hockey Night in Canada. So it's just sort of lost the allure. People can see these players all the time. I don't think they need to see All-Star games.
Right. No, I think you're right. And speaking of which, watching games everywhere, tune into MLB tonight at 7 o'clock for MLB Showcase Night in America.
Here's the thing, though. I will tell you this. I believe you could have a humongous boost for the NHL All-Star Game if you did it as an outdoor game. I think it would be massive.
I think you're right.
Yes. But
someone's listening to me, and I've been saying it for 5 years, but they have to do it.
But please do not have the winner of the All-Star game get the home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup Final. Ty, wouldn't that be great for the Eastern Conference to win the All-Star game and get home ice in the playoffs?
For once, right? Be the first time ever.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Let's get started here. We'll go in this order: Russ, Ty, Dan. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, Tie Day, July 17th, 2015.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Ty Anderson of Tie Day.
And I'm Dan Petru of No Fancy Title.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Yes, it is Friday, so we're rolling down the week. A fairly eventful week in the sense of signings. A lot of little signings with players, qualifying offers, and 1-2 year extensions of deals. We'll talk about one of the bigger signings and the Kesler signing in a bit, but I wanted to talk about the signing that came right after the webcast yesterday, Russ, the Michael Del Zotto signing with the Flyers. He re-ups for 2 years at $7.75 million, so I think it was $3.875 as the cap hit per year. He avoids arbitration. What did you think of the dollar amount and the term on that deal?
No, I thought it was excellent. I mean, actually, I told you yesterday I felt like it was going to be close to that walk-away number. And it was. That's as close as you can get to the walk-away number and not having given the team the option to walk away. So I think he made as much as he can make, and he now gets a 2-year deal. And if he plays well for 2 years, then he'll start getting that big money again. And so I think he's worked his way into it. He was excellent last year. I felt like at times Craig Berube misused him and actually benched him for no reason, like, maybe one bad play and all of a sudden Del Zotto's not playing for long stretches. I don't think that's going to happen to him in this system. So I think there's still room for improvement. I don't mean that he's going to get more than 10 goals, but I think he can get more points.
Ty, the thing with, and I'm not casting aspersions here about Del Zotto, but he's generally regarded as a one-dimensional defenseman, as an offensive guy. Now, he can improve defensively, but right now he's still that guy. And he's making almost $4 million a year. I mean, he had a pretty good year. He tied his career high in goals with 10 last year. But I mean, you're talking about $4 million for almost $4 million for a one-dimensional guy. Is this where the NHL is going?
I think so. I mean, you have to look at this too. We think of Del Zotto as a one-dimensional player, and maybe this is just because the Flyers are so bad, defensively year after year. He looked okay in his role last year, I thought, and when you look at this player and you look at what he recorded point-wise and the situations he was used in, I think $4 million has become the market norm. I mean, we look around the league there, and I think that this could be a good deal for the Flyers moving forward. I like how it's short-term as well. It's 2 years. If he's reverts back to what he used to be, where he's this inconsistent, maddening defenseman that you can't trust in any situation, then they're out of it within 2 years. But, if he continues to progress this way and they find ways to work on his defensive game, this could be a real bargain for Philadelphia.
Dan, is the reason why Del Zotto looked good last year is because most of the defensemen on the Flyers are ex-Islanders defensemen?
You just read my mind. Yeah, it's easy to look good when you got Mark Streit, Andrew McDonald, and Luke Schenn out there, if the orange parking cone trio at time. I actually think Del Zotto had a very nice year last year. He really did take a step forward, I think. The problem is you just look at collectively. I don't think his contract is that bad, but you put their contracts together collectively of their quote-unquote top 4 defensemen, that doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room, and they're right up against the cap now, too.
But they upgraded because basically it's the same money you would have been paying Nick Grossman, and at least you have Del Zotto instead, and so that's you would rather have Del Zotto over Grossman.
Oh, I agree. Like I said, I don't think Del Zotto's the issue here. I think it's the other defensemen in the lineup that are the issue.
But I don't think Streit is either. I got to defend Mark Streit again. I mean, again,
he had a nice year.
He had 52 points. I mean,
he had a very nice year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say anything bad about him. I thought defensively he was okay, and offensively he was really good. He was.
Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Russ. The fact that with all these players going to salary arbitration, it opens up a second buyout window for some teams, and I think I threw out Umberger's name as a possible if the Flyers wanted to go that direction, but they're probably not. There's a lot of talk about Edmonton with this particular scenario. They settled before going to arbitration with Justin Schultz. A second buyout window opens, and the names of two defensemen, one is Nikita Nikitin, the other one is former Bruin Andrew Ference. Nikitin has 1 year left. I think he's making around $4.5 million. Ference is making under $4, I believe, but he's got 2 years left. Ty, I mean, I know that Ference left for Edmonton with Chiarelli there. I don't know what the relationship was there, but I mean, do you think that if they do go down this buyout window, do you think it's going to be Nikitin or do you think it's going to be Ference? And is there any sort of bad relationship between Chiarelli and Ference?
No, actually, Ference and Chiarelli have a great relationship. That was one of Chiarelli's better relationships. He frequently rewarded Ference, in different ways. One of which being a contract that at the time many criticized, thinking that Ference wasn't worth it because he was injury prone and things of that nature. But he really admires the hell out of Andrew Ference as a person, as a leader, and as a voice in that locker room. And I don't think that it would be Ference if one of those two were to go. It's interesting, though, because he did like Nikita Nikitin quite a lot. When he was GM of the Boston Bruins, they were in on Nikitin for a pretty long time, a pretty long while there, and obviously never came to fruition, but that's a player that he likes as well. But if you ask me point blank, there's no way that Chiarelli will just ditch Andrew Ference like that. I think there's just too much respect between the two parties, and I think that Chiarelli, he looks at what Ference brought to the Bruins in 2011 when they won a cup, and granted, Edmonton is not close to a cup like that team was, but Andrew Ference is a presence that most locker rooms would be lucky to have, and I think he realizes that.
I think both of their contracts are maybe a little. I don't think their contracts are horrible. I think the roles that they were expected to fill were probably roles that they just can't fill. Asking those guys to move up in pairings probably were roles that they just couldn't handle, especially if you consider the other defensemen on the Edmonton team. If one of those guys was bought out, I think there would be some interest, around the league as a bottom pairing defenseman. I think either one of those guys would be quite attractive.
Yeah, and Edmonton might. I mean, I saw the scenario that Edmonton, if they don't buy him out and don't want to take the cap hit on Nikitin for 2 years as a buyout, it would. I think, let's see, 4.5. It would be $1.5 million for 2 years if they bought him out. But he's a serviceable defenseman. They could retain salary and possibly move him someplace else. But the whole reason for this is because Russ, they didn't think they were going to get Andres Sekera. I don't think they thought I don't think they realized that they thought they could really get him.
Right, I think that's a part of it. Look, I'm not a big Nikitin guy. I think Ference can fill a role. He always can fill a role. Plus, you got to have him around to overlook the recycling program. Otherwise, that's going to go to hell. So you got to, come on, he's a green guy. Come on, that's a good joke. You guys, nothing, deadpan audience.
He's a huge Arsenal fan too, and I am as well. So I always have a lot of respect just based on that.
But Nikitin, really, to me, it was just a bad contract. I think he's a bad defenseman. I don't know how much interest he really would garner around the league. I would be surprised.
He's better than Griffin Reinhart.
Well, yeah.
Right this moment, but I mean, come on, that's not.
I'm just kidding.
The thing with, I think you look at Ference, right? If you watched the 2013 Stanley Cup, you knew that Andrew Ference was sort of on his way out as a top four defenseman. And the offer from Edmonton was really to be a top four and the captain, which he can be a great captain. I think there's no doubt about that. He's a tremendous, role player for that situation. But he's not a top four defenseman anymore. He is a 5 or a 6, and it's tough to have your captain be that player when you're the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, and they have a lot of young defensemen in Reinhart and Darnell Nurse. I don't know if Nurse is going to make it this year or if they'll put him in the AHL. I think their AHL team is in Bakersfield now. They may want to keep him down there and let him gain experience and if that's the case, then maybe they keep Nikitin, or maybe they just want to clear the cap space. But I think that there's something there. There's just been too much talk regarding it. So where there's smoke, there's usually fire. I saw a little blurb today about the 2018 Olympics, about South Korea, And it's strange that we really haven't heard a lot about, whether the NHL is going there. I have a feeling that they're maybe going to wait until, next summer when the World Cup is going on. I mean, that's a collaborative effort between the IIHF and the NHLPA and the NHL, and that would probably be a good time to announce if they are going or if they're not going to South Korea. Russ, I mean, to me, I don't. I mean, I'll watch it, I'll cover it, but I don't care. But I mean, the NHL. I mean, they seem to benefit from it, but the problem is the time difference and everything else, like happened in Sochi. I don't know how much it benefits them.
Yeah, I don't know if it benefits them at all. I mean, again, the IIHF makes all the money on the jerseys. The NHL really doesn't make anything. The NHL is shutting down their season. They're lending out their players. They're getting this supposed bump, but really just singular players get the bump, like TJ Oshie, and maybe everybody in Canada and the U.S. feels good for a week or two. But if we're watching games at 3 in the morning, no one's going to feel good about it. So I think the reason – I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the last one they announced way sooner than what they're doing here. And I think the reason is the time difference. And it wouldn't shock me if it's a culture difference, too. I mean, look, there's some things they do over there that we as Americans don't do and North Americans don't do. And so maybe there's some of that, too, where they're sort of deciding, do we even want to go there?
Right. And people, I mean, this is the thing. I watched the Olympics the live in '98 from Nagano, and the big game, Canada versus the Czech Republic, when Hasek stoned the Canadians in the shootout and Gretzky wasn't used, that whole thing. That game was at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was.
I recorded it on VHS and then I watched it back when I woke up.
Yeah, and I remember a World Cup. I remember a World Cup of the soccer World Cup that was in, I don't know, I think it was in Korea. That the same thing. The games were at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're talking about, you're not going to get ratings. You're not going to get ratings, Ty. So I don't know how much this benefits, unless this is sort of a quid pro quo. We will participate in the World Cup if you participate in the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, 3 in the morning. I remember, for me personally, one of the harder Olympics to watch. I don't remember Nagano. I was like 8 years old, I think, but I don't think I was allowed to watch. They haven't watched those games. But I remember when it was in Torino, and that was sort of tough to sort of keep pace with what was going on. And that wasn't that great of a time difference. It was just, there's hockey on right now. So if you put it at 3 in the morning, you're going to get your night owls, especially with the age of Twitter. People will be up and watching it and participating. But for a network standpoint, it's not worth it. I mean, you're going to have Doc Emmerich and Pierre Maguire between the benches here and, in South Korea. I mean, who's going to watch? I just don't think it will be be worth it for NBC, for one. So that's a tough sell for me. I like the Olympics and I like hockey in the Olympics, but I mean, if the World Cup of hockey is successful, it sort of becomes a moot point. Do you really need it?
I don't think it will affect NBC. It'll affect the NHL, and they don't see any revenue. It doesn't really affect them. Maybe it's a huge inconvenience for them. But it won't affect NBC at all because the Olympics is already paid for and it's sold as an entire package to the advertisers, not just an individual sport. So I don't think Pepsi's going to pull any ads because it might not get as much exposure at 3 a.m. But I think the biggest thing is, just for me personally, I'm all set with seeing John Tavares' knee get ripped apart with wearing a Team Canada jersey.
But here,
I already saw it once. I don't want to see it anymore.
Thinking positively, though. We're going to see empty stands, too. I don't think a lot of these games
absolutely
care about it, and that's bad TV, too.
Yes. Yeah, but if it was in North Korea, Russ, you wouldn't see empty stands because they'd be under orders to sit in the stands. But maybe in South Korea they have the freedom to actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing is that 4 years after. I mean, they haven't assigned the 2022 Olympics yet, the Winter Olympics. But from everything I hear, it's going to be China or it may go to Russia again. It's not Europe. It's not North America. It's probably going to be an Asian Olympics once again. And if it is, I mean, then Gary Bettman may be thinking, okay, two times in a row, that's not going to work for us. So maybe they cut it off now and just go with the World Cup because the World Cup they actually make money on. So
I actually think that's what they've been sort of going towards since the last Olympics. I think that's really been the plan, but they don't want to say it yet. Just my personal opinion, but I think it's the way to go. I do.
Yeah. Now, Russ, you and I touched on this, so I want to get the other guys' thoughts on this. Anaheim re-signed Ryan Kesler to a 6-year extension at $41.25 million. It's $6.875 million per season. That's the same amount that Patrice Bergeron is making with the Bruins. Ty, he's 31 years old. He's a similar player in the sense that he's a two-way guy, but I actually think Bergeron is a better offensive player. What did you think when you heard that deal?
It's a lot of money for a guy who's going to be 37 or 38 by the end of that contract, and
yeah.
I know he's going to be worth it right now, and obviously that's what Anaheim is thinking. They're in a win-now situation, but I mean that's a lot of money to commit for a very long time. I just don't know if he'll be worth that. What is it, 6.8? When he's 37, 38 years old, I have my doubts there, and that's when you get stuck with contracts. Really, think about it. You get these players that are older, and their skating game will go eventually. The style that Ryan Kesler plays is not kind to aging. So it's going to be interesting. I know he's been a model of consistency, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 years since I think '07. He's played in at least 70-something games, with the exception of 1 or 2 seasons. So he has been healthy, but at a certain point, that luck you think will run out, and he will go through some injuries, and he won't be a $6.8 million player, and that's going to be a concern because then the contract becomes completely just stuck in the mud on your books, and it's going to be very hard to get rid of. And I think that's something that they'll have to think about 5 years from now. But in the now, I mean, hey, it's worth it for them because he was an absolute force for them. Having a 1-2 of Getzlaf and Kesler is just tremendous for the Anaheim Ducks moving forward.
Dan,
Yeah.
the reason that Vancouver did the deal last year is the over concerns that a guy like Kesler. I mean, he was a UFA at the end of next year, but the thing was, they thought as an aging player, as somebody who was 34, 35 years old, because of the crash and bang style that he plays, that he would start slipping a lot earlier. And now Anaheim signs him for 6 years. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think it's the typical state of hockey. It's the typical state of NHL contracts. Probably a little too much money a year, probably a few 2 years too long, but these teams don't care about the last 2 years of the deals, honestly. They care about the here and now, and right now, the Ducks are in a win-now mode. So for them, the next 3 seasons of Kesler is what they're looking at right now, and they'll figure it out when they get down the road, and they'll probably be in a mess in a few years.
Yeah. Now, I've had a tendency this week to play games, so we're going to play a game. And Russ, I was going to pull up some theme music. I had the old Roger Daltrey song "Free Me" ready, but I couldn't find a good enough audio to actually have it be heard on the microphone. But along with Kesler and Ryan O'Reilly, the first 2 names on the 2016 UFA, the free agent list, have dropped off. Right now, if you looked at the list right now, there are a number of really interesting players, but following the trend of what happened last year, I mean, guys like Spezza dropped off, and really, I think this year's free agent class was the worst in recent memory. That's probably going to happen. Now, a number of these players are going to drop off, and we're going to have Brad Richards hit the market again next year. But right now, these guys have the potential of being free. And I'm going to read off 2 names. The question is, which one of these 2 has a greater chance of hitting the open market next July? Okay? We'll each go around. Each of you will get a chance. Russ, you first. Brent Seabrook or Mark Giordano?
I'll go Giordano, but I really don't think either will be available. But I'll go Giordano.
Right. I mean, I think more than likely that most of the players on this list are going to sign, but it's just gauging the likelihood. I agree. I will say Giordano because his opening gambit was $9 million for an 8-year deal. If he sticks to that number, he's going to be testing the waters. Ty, what do you think?
I'll say Seabrook, because I think that to stay in Chicago, he'll need to take some sort of a discount. We've talked about this before. I just think that if he's won 3 cups now. Now would be the time to get paid. And I think that you don't want to break up the band, but if there is a time to do it, it's when you become a free agent. You have to look out for yourself. And he could get big money based on his name, his legacy now with the Blackhawks, and I think that's really tough to really deny if you're a player like Seabrook, who is hitting his age and where he's at in his career. I think that's going to be too good of an offer to sort of let go and say, yeah, I'll take even less to stay here. Giordano, I mean, he's the heart and soul of the Flames, and I think he understands that, and I think both parties understand that, and I think that will get done rather painlessly, I would say.
It's gonna be tough for Seabrook to take an amount that's reasonable, because I think Duncan Keith is $5.5 million. They're gonna want him to $6 million or $6.5 million, something reasonable, and I don't think they're gonna want to do that. Dan, who of the two, which one do you think has the greater likelihood of reaching July 1st next year?
Yeah, I would say Seabrook, only based on what he would demand on the open market. From what you're looking at the contracts of first pairing defenseman, he should easily merit $7 to $8 million a year, and I just don't think the Blackhawks can afford that or will pay someone that much more than Duncan Keith. I think if he wants to stay in Chicago, he's going to have to take a little bit of a discount. So I think that's on him. He's not getting any younger. If he wants to get paid, he can hit it on the open market. If he wants to keep the band rolling, then he can stay in Chicago. But I don't think Chicago still has cap problems for the near future, and I just can't see him taking a hometown discount. You just don't see it too much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, second pairing here. Ty, you first. Andrew Ladd, team captain of the Winnipeg Jets, or Milan Lucic of the LA Kings? That still sounds strange.
I'll go Lucic just because I know he's going to be a star in LA. They're going to love him there. He's going to love it there. But I think that a player, knowing what he wanted to stay with the Bruins and knowing the situation the LA Kings are in, I don't think there's any way that Lucic does not hit the open market and just gauge what his value is out there. He wants to be paid $7.5 to $8 million a year. I don't know if anyone's going to do it. The team might be desperate enough, but you'd be a fool not to go out there and see if that does come your way. And I do think that I think he's going to like LA, but I just think that the option of hitting the open market and cashing in with a huge deal like that, he's not going to pass that up, especially if it means returning back home to Vancouver or going. I know it's something that he said he didn't want to do at first, but I do think that deep down he does want to be in Vancouver. He does want to consider that, like a homecoming of sorts. And he is familiar with Jim Benning. Jim Benning has a tendency to pay guys, so that might be a fit for him. So I go Lucic there.
Dan?
I think Lucic is going to pop in probably 26 goals this year and cause havoc in the Western Conference, and some GM is going to do something stupid and give him about $8 million a year. So I would think it's Lucic. Also, the Jets. I think the Jets are in a decent situation where they have enough players on entry-level contracts that they can pony up and pay Andrew Ladd. And him being the captain of the team there, I think player and organization's a really good fit there.
Russ?
Yeah, I'm going to go Lucic too. And if I'm a future GM, I'm going to put a clause in there that you have to be out there and shake hands at the end of a playoff series because that was still weak sauce. I still have never forgiven him for that.
Jeez.
You live on Montreal both.
Yeah, I wouldn't shake the hands of a Hab.
No, but you hate the Canadians, so.
Okay, third pairing here. Dan, you first. Jakub Voracek or Kyle Okposo?
It's funny. Myself and Noel Fogelman, our newest writer for on Hockeybuzz, just had the same conversation about an hour and a half ago, and Okposo's probably going to want about $7 million on the open market, and Voracek's probably going to want about $8 million. I'd rather have a known commodity of Voracek at $8 million than Okposo at $7 million. Someone who's not scored 30 goals ever in a season, someone who has not shown that he can stay healthy the past couple of years as well. I love Kyle Okposo. I think his jersey's right here. I really do. Really do like what he brings to the table, but I think he has to play this season out, and I think he has to. If he wants that big money, he's going to have to go out there, stay healthy, and pop in a 70-point season. So I would think of the two. I could see both of them hitting the free market, the market. To be honest, I would think Okposo right now over Voracek would hit the market.
Russ,
Also, based on the fact that the Islanders have a lot of players they're going to have to lock up soon.
yeah, Russ, I would think that the priority number one for next year is to get Voracek locked up.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. They know he's going to get a max contract. They're going to give him a max contract. They just have to figure out how to fit him in. So I think it'll be Kyle Okposo, and I think 70 is kind of shooting high. I think if he were to have a 55-point year with 25 goals, I think he would still get a decent contract. He's not getting $7 million.
He's not getting $7 million for 55 points.
I don't even think if he got 70 points, he's getting $7 million. I just don't think he's got enough of a track record for that. But I think if he could show consistency and get 25 goals, he'll be a hot commodity. Teams will definitely want him. But again, he has to stay healthy. He really does.
And you don't know what he's going to be like. You really haven't seen a large enough sample coming back off that detached retina surgery. I mean, he was not good the end of last year coming off that surgery. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks now with a full camp and some time off to heal.
See, I'll be surprised if he's not traded by the deadline because they can get something for him, and I think they have so many young forwards that I think they could get assets back, and then I think that increases the possibility of Okposo testing the market because he won't be able to.
Can you trade a top six? Let's say the Islanders are in a playoff hunt, locked into a playoff spot at the deadline. Can you trade one of your top six forwards at the deadline if you're playing that well?
Not smart. Ryan Callahan.
Yeah, but I mean that was a rarity. I don't think Garth Snow would do that.
I don't either. I think he'd let it just play it out. And if he's not going to last, and you got to flip his rights for a second-round pick, so be it. I think a long playoff run's more important right now.
Ty, what do you think?
I think Okposo would be more likely, just because. I mean, it's just tough to say because I think his contract is such a steal right now that he's going to want to get paid, and if you're playing with John Tavares, there's the possibility for a whole bunch of points. So if that's going to be a sexy number, and I just think that he'll get paid with that. I mean, obviously there's a flip side to it. I thought this way about Matt Molson as well, right. And that didn't necessarily pan out. So I just think that I got a feeling that he's going to hit the open market. I think Voracek. The Flyers know that they have a great setup there with Claude Giroux and Voracek as their 1-2 punch, and I think they understand that more so than the Islanders are confident in Tavares and Okposo at this point. So I just think that will get taken care of first.
Russ, I will stress before I mention these two names that I think the chances of them hitting July 1st as free agents are infinitesimal. That being said, Steven Stamkos or Anze Kopitar?
I mean, just because you're making me give an answer, I'll give the answer of Anze Kopitar. But, yeah, neither of them are going to hit.
Right. Dan?
Stamkos. I think the entire cap structure of the Kings is to get Kopitar signed, and I think that will be a part. I think Kopitar wants to stay there. I don't think there's any way he's going to be test the market. It all depends. I do think Tampa will re-sign Stamkos, but it's at the expense of what other young player on that team, because they have quite a few of them that are all going to get hefty raises in a few years. So I think that one could be a little more trickier, but I think at the end of the day, neither of these guys hit free agency. But if you're asking for a name, I would say Stamkos.
Ty?
I'll say Stamkos as well, because that's a massive talent. I mean, you guys see what's out there, and I do think he will get re-signed. I don't think it's much of a debate really, but I think that if one of those two were to hit the open market, I think it'd be Stamkos.
Yeah, I think Stamkos, but I will say this as a caveat. I mean, I think, as one of you said, they're geared. LA is geared to sign Kopitar to that max deal for probably $7-8 million, whatever it ends up costing. They're going to do it. With Tampa, I think they're going to re-sign Stamkos, but I have the feeling that the window of him being in Tampa is not as long as people think, because you're talking about Kucherov and Palat and Johnson and Killorn, all these guys coming up for restricted or unrestricted free agency in the next 2 years. I think there's a window there. I think they keep Stamkos, they re-sign him, they give him, Kane Taves money, $10 million bucks. But 2 years down the line, 2 years into this 8-year deal that he signs, they may say, okay, we have all these guys, and it's either keep all of them or keep Stamkos and lose a couple of them. And I think there's a possibility that they may trade him.
See, I don't think so. They draft well. I don't think Yzerman will do that. I think Yzerman, the same way he was viewed as a franchise guy, will treat Stamkos that way, and he'll work out the rest. Like I said, Tyler Johnson will end up being a guy that gets sacrificed there when you're talking about those players. To me, he seems like the one.
Really? I mean, so would you rather, if your structure was, I'm going to keep Stamkos or I'm going to pay Hedman, Johnson, and one of the other kids, you would rather keep Stamkos and then sacrifice potentially one of the other kids?
Yeah, because long term, I'll take Kucherov over Tyler Johnson. I don't know if Tyler Johnson's going to do what he did every year, and he couldn't even finish out the year. So that's I honestly
broken wrist.
No, I know. I'm just saying, but he is a smaller guy. We'll see. I just have a feeling that he might be the one that doesn't get benefited here, and the other guys hang around.
If he puts up another season like he did this year, then that may change the formula a bit.
Let's see him do it first.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, guys like Killorn and Palat, they might be replaceable if with good drafting, but let's just say
here's the bottom line. You want to know the bottom line? You can't get a Steve Stamkos in the draft every year. You can get a Tyler Johnson in the draft every year. That's the bottom line. You can.
Okay.
You can get him in a draft, so there's always that too.
I know, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, two more pairs, then we'll move on here. Ty, here's a battle of, questionably called defensemen. Dustin Byfuglien or Keith Yandle?
Keith Yandle, just because I think I do think that there is a sort of sentiment there that the Boston Bruins will have heavy interest in him, and I think that he would want to explore that. He himself, he was pretty convinced that he was going to be traded to the Boston Bruins, and I think deep down he was a bit excited about that. So it wouldn't surprise me if he does hit that market and just sees what's out there, specifically in Boston. And also at the same time, Jeff Gorton's working some magic with the Rangers right now in terms of creating the cap space to re-sign Derek Stepan, but I just think that situation, he needs to manage that well, and I don't know if they want to necessarily pay Keith Yandle if he's going to be a third pairing or a power play specialist with the Rangers.
Dan?
Yeah, I think very similar reasons. I think Yandle. I could see both of these guys being on the market next year, quite honestly, because I think Byfuglien's going to want an absurd pay raise, and I don't think Yandle fits into the structure of the Rangers. I mean, their power play was better when they brought him along, but it wasn't like it was setting the world on fire. And if he's I don't know if you can pay a bottom pairing defenseman that much money, especially with the contracts that they have on that team. So I think right now, if it's just one of them, I would say Yandle.
Russ, I don't see Byfuglien re-signing in Winnipeg. I think they're going to move him before the deadline. But I think if they do, there's a good chance he could re-sign with the team that he gets traded to. Whereas I don't think there's any chance that Yandle is going to be a Ranger after next year.
Yeah, I feel like there's a 5% chance Yandle's a Ranger next year, and it's simply because how are you going to pay 4 defensemen top money?
Right.
Unless you're getting rid of Staal or Girardi, you're just not going to be able to do that. Gordon's not going to do that. Even if he likes him, it's not going to be a personal thing. It's going to be a cap thing. And so I agree. And Byfuglien I can see getting traded. However, if he has another year where he looks like a Norris guy, they might pay the money because they do have the money to pay. And so that one's a little iffy, but more likely that he will get traded too. But the thing is, Yandle, I don't think the Rangers ever had any thoughts of re-signing him when they got him. They just sort of slotted him in there, and they knew they got him cheap for a couple of years, and I think that was the plan.
Yeah. And the last pairing here, Dan, you first. A pair of 31-year-old centers. Eric Staal, and David Backes.
Once again, you can make a case for both of them. I do think Backes is a heart and soul player of the Blues. He is their captain. He's almost their identity. I think there's a lot of wear on those tires, and he plays a similar game to how Ryan Kesler plays. And while he is 31, that's a hard 31. With all of that being said, I think Carolina is. I don't really know what Carolina is, but I do think they do want to press the reset button there, and you're not sure if Staal would want to commit to that reset and to that rebuild. So I definitely think he's the one who could be hitting the market.
Ty?
I would honestly say that I do think that if the St. Louis Blues struggle and they continue to falter in the postseason, moving on from David Backes would be their way of saying we're changing who we are, we're changing what we're doing. From our captaincy to how we assemble our forward core, and I think that he would be the example of that. Not necessarily for the best, but it would allow the Blues to think this is the change we're making, and this is how it's going to be. And I just think that there is this weird loyalty, I think, between Eric Staal and Cam Ward and the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that they've been through so much together, and they've been there for so long now that it's hard. It's going to be hard for any of those guys to move forward, I think, and so I do think that there is a compromise made between those two sides at some point, and I just think that another St. Louis Blues shortcoming leads them to say, hey, David Backes, we're gonna move forward without you. It's just how I think that could play out.
Russ?
Yeah, I think Backes is the one that would go because of the type of game that he plays. I do think he has a lot of mileage on him. I think Eric Staal still means a lot to selling tickets out there. And that's something where I don't think Backes is as tied into that in St. Louis as Staal is into a little bit of a weaker market. Also, it does seem like in recent weeks, Staal is willing to move off his number a little bit and sort of help the cap situation. And I think that's what will ultimately happen.
I'm surprised it hasn't gotten done already. I mean, he's 8.25. It's $8.25 million on the last year of that deal. I mean, I would think he's got to take, realizing he's 31 and he's probably going to start the downslope of his career. His number's going to have to be similar to what his brother is getting, which is in the $6 million range. If he takes that, then I think he stays there for the rest of his career. Possibly.
Probably negotiating for Jared too. That's probably the holdup.
Yeah, there you go. It's the Ryan O'Reilly, Cal O'Reilly deal. Yeah. There you go. Okay. Now I sent you guys the list of trades that have occurred. It's I think it's about a month since the Stanley Cup Final ended, and we've had a number of deals. And we're not going to go into the free agent signings because we don't know what's going to happen with those. But there were trades. There were a number of trades. Some are good. Some are even. Some I think are a little one-sided. And I'm going to ask each one of you to give me a couple trades. We'll just go one at a time here, though. Dan, what was your first nomination for a lopsided deal this last month?
This might not be popular. I'm not sure. I really think St. Louis won the TJ Oshie trade, and that might be completely against what everyone else says. I think Washington's going to score more goals next year. I think they might be a little more exciting. I think they're a little easier to play in the playoffs now. I like what Brouwer brings to the table. I like what he was able to do in that lineup, and I think he's going to fit in really well in St. Louis. And I could see Oshie walking after a year. So I think that's a really good trade for the Blues. If they identified that Oshie was not part of their core, they moved him, and they got a really good asset coming back.
Ty?
I go with the Patrick Sharp trade. I know Sharp's on the decline, really, but you gave up Trevor Daley and Ryan Garbutt, and you also got Stephen Johns, who I think is a pretty solid defensive prospect. Granted, the Stars are loaded on their blue line with prospects that can chip in, in the near future. But I think that was a situation where you didn't give up a whole lot for what you're getting in return, and that makes that Stars team even better, I think.
Russ?
Yeah, my number one is Carolina. I think won that Wisniewski deal. Regardless of whatever money you're taking on, you gave up a backup goalie for a guy who could be a number 2 or 3 defenseman for them, and has a lot of skill and can definitely put up points and skates really well. It's inexplicable why Anaheim never used him in the playoffs. I don't know if he gave the middle finger to Bruce Boudreau. I don't know what he did. Honestly,
Yeah, I know. I mean,
They trade for the guy at the deadline, then they don't use him.
Right.
yeah, and I mean, granted, Anaheim's defense overachieved. You know, a lot of the young players really played well, but are you telling me that Wisniewski wasn't as good to play as say Clayton Stoner? I didn't get that. Coincidentally, the one I had is on the top of my list was Anaheim getting Kevin Bieksa from Vancouver for a second-round pick. You know, I think they're good. They're defensemen. You know, guys like Vatanen and Lindholm and Cam Fowler are good. But you add a veteran defenseman who's 32 years old. They extend him for a couple years. He's still got something left in the tank. He's going to be on their second pairing. So I think that was a really good move by Bob Murray. Dan, give me your second one.
Well, you know, I think this is a lopsided trade right now. A couple of years from now, when we see the final products of the deal, it might not be. But I think the fact that Gart Snow was able to take a guy in Griffin Reinhart who's played 8 NHL games and essentially turn him into 2 first-round picks, I thought that was quite a coup. He didn't fit what the Islanders needed. Obviously, I still think he can still be an NHL defenseman and potentially a top 4, but it's going to be a while. And with the fact that the Islanders were able to turn that into 2 first-round picks and address other needs, I thought that was a really good job where they got comparable value of what the Flames gave up to get Dougie Hamilton, a guy who's far more proven than Griffin Reinhart.
Ty?
I would go with the trade that sent Riley Smith and Mark Savard to Florida for Jimmy Hayes. That was got rid of a lot of dead space for the Boston Bruins. They got a player that's 6'6", Jimmy Hayes. Go to the front of the net. He'll go to the dirty areas. That's what they need.
Russ?
I'm going to go on the other side of the Oshie deal. I really don't think Washington gave up very much at all. I think Brouwer's a nice player, but I really think Oshie for them is a dynamic player, and I think they're going to market the hell out of him too.
Right. I'll take an easy one here. I always have liked Dougie Hamilton. It's nice to get 3 draft picks, but I think he's a franchise level defenseman. And with the possibility of Giordano, if he sticks to that high number, walking at the end of next year, Calgary and Brad Treliving replace him with Dougie Hamilton. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be part of the mix, but get themselves a 21-year-old defenseman who played 2 years in the NHL, and I think he's going to be a pretty good. And they got him on a really good number on the contract as well. So I think that was a really good deal for the Flames. Dan, do you have any more? You have another one?
I really like what the Bruins were able to do, sending Martin Jones to San Jose. I don't think Jones is a proven commodity, and the fact that they were able to get a first-round pick back. The Bruins did a lot of questionable things, but I thought before the draft, I thought they recovered pretty well after the draft, and I think I like Jones. You just I'm not sure. I don't know if we've seen enough of him yet, and the fact that they were able to swing a first-round pick for him, I thought that was a really good deal.
Ty?
I go with the Hamilton. I mean, the Hamilton trade, as you brought up, it was not a good one for the Boston Bruins. They just did not get enough of a return for a player that, scored 42 points for them last year in 70 games. That's just inexcusable. The return is just awful. And I know they got 3 picks out of it, and that's great. But it doesn't replace him right now. And they still don't have a replacement lineup for him. So I think that was a bad trade. They rebounded well, like Dan said, but that was not a good start to what could have been with Dougie Hamilton.
Russ? Well,
this is a minor trade, but this is one that sort of helps set up another one. The Rangers trade Ryan Haggerty, and they get Antti Raanta, from Chicago, and Ranta's a really solid backup. I mean, Chicago just decided, hey, we don't like you. I interviewed Raanta at the Winter Classic. He was the backup goalie for that. And shortly after that, he was in the doghouse for the rest of the year. So I think that was really good, and that also enabled the Rangers to then trade Cam Talbot for pick.
Mm-hmm. I'll give this one as an honorable mention. I had the Jones deal as the third one, but I liked, and I'm probably in the minority, I liked the Robin Lehner, David Legwand deal for the Sabres. Legwand is a throw-in. He's basically them eating salary. But they can flip him at the deadline maybe and eat some of his salary and then get another draft pick back. but Leonard is under control for 2 more years at around $2.3 million, and he's a restricted free agent after those 2 years. And he's 23 years old, and I really don't think he was ever given a full crack at the number 1 job in Ottawa. They'd always go back to Craig Anderson, and then he had some injury problems. I think he's a number 1 goaltender, and I think that was a really astute move by Tim Murray.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, guys, good show. We will be back on Monday with read Russ's book. Ack will be back on Monday. Kevin will be back, and we have one of our cast of characters throughout the week. So thanks to Dan Petru, Ty Anderson, what's going on? I'm Willow. And remember, there's just hot.